The message came at 3 in the morning. Admiral Kongtae was sleeping in his quarters on the orbital station when his communicator began to scream. He opened his eyes and looked at the ceiling for a moment before reaching for the device. He had served in the fleet for 30 years. He knew that calls at 3 in the morning never brought good news. "Tsk," the voice on the other end said. It was shaking. "You need to see this. The horizon's edge found something." 20 minutes later, Tay stood in the command center. His uniform was wrinkled, and his hair was messy, but nobody cared. Everyone was staring at the main screen. On it was Captain Park Yuna, commander of the survey vessel Horizon's Edge. She was usually calm and professional. Today her face was pale, and her hands were trembling. "Show me," Tay said. Yuna nodded, and the screen changed. It showed a structure floating in space near a dying star. The structure was massive. It was bigger than any space station humanity had ever built. It was covered in strange symbols that seemed to move when you looked at them directly. "We found it 3 days ago," Yuna explained. "It belongs to a species called the Velmari. They died 2.3 million years ago. We do not know how they died. We only know that they left this behind." Tay said quietly, "Yes, sir. The largest one ever discovered. It contains the entire history of their civilization. Their art, their science, their dreams, their failures. Everything." Yuna paused. Her voice dropped lower. "And something else." Dr. Lee Hanna appeared on the screen next to Yuna. She was the head of the xenolinguistics team, responsible for translating alien languages. She was young but brilliant. Right now, she looked like she had not slept in days, Admiral Hanna said. The Velmari dedicated an entire section of their archive to Earth. Tay felt something cold move through his chest. Earth. But 2.3 million years ago, we were nothing. We were barely walking upright, I know Hanna said. That is what makes this so strange. At the time the Velmari wrote this, Earth had nothing but simple life forms. Single cells, bacteria, nothing special, nothing worth noticing. But they noticed. They noticed very much. The screen changed again. It showed alien texts flowing and beautiful, translated into English below. "Do not approach the third planet," Hanna read aloud. "Do not contact. Do not study. Do not wake what sleeps beneath the noise of their minds. They are the lock. We are grateful they do not know what they guard." The command center was silent. Tay could hear his own heartbeat. "What does that mean?" Someone asked from the back of the room. "We do not know," Hanna admitted. "But this is not the first warning we have found." She pressed a button, and the screen filled with more text. Different languages, different symbols, different species. But the message was the same. Stay away from Earth. Do not make contact. Do not interfere. They guard something. They must never know. 17 warnings, Hanna said. From 17 different civilizations. All of them dead. All of them left the same message about Earth. Tay stared at the screen. His mind was racing. Humanity had been searching for alien life for centuries. They had found ruins, artifacts, and archives. They had found proof that the universe was once full of intelligent species. But they had never found a living alien. Every civilization they discovered was dead, and every single one of them had written about Earth. Why? Tay asked. Why would they care about us? That is the question, Yuna said. The Velmari were a great civilization. They built ships that could cross galaxies. They lived for thousands of years. They had technology we cannot even understand. Why would they care about a small blue planet with nothing but bacteria? Hanna pulled up more data. The warnings span 800 million years, Admiral. The oldest one comes from a species that existed before complex life even appeared on Earth. They were watching us before we existed. They were afraid of us before we were born. Afraid of us? Tay shook his head. That makes no sense. We are not dangerous. We barely made it to space a few centuries ago. No, Hanna said slowly. They were not afraid of us. Read the warnings again. They say we are the lock. They say we guard something. They were not afraid of humanity. Her voice became very quiet. They were afraid of what humanity is keeping trapped. The cold feeling in Tay's chest grew stronger. He thought about Earth, about the billions of people living their normal lives. Working, sleeping, dreaming, loving, fighting. Did they know? Could they feel it? Were they guarding something without even knowing? I want a full investigation, Tay ordered. Every archive, every ruin, every piece of alien writing we have ever found. Search all of it. I want to know everything these civilizations said about Earth, Sir Eunice said carefully. What if we find something we cannot handle? Tay looked at her. Then he looked at the screen, at the ancient warning from a species that had died millions of years before humans existed. We found it already, he said. The only question now is whether we are brave enough to understand it. The communication ended. Tay stood alone in the command center, surrounded by the soft hum of machines. Outside the window, Earth floated in the darkness. Blue and green and white, beautiful and peaceful. Home? He thought about the words again. The lock. The guard. Something sleeping beneath the noise of human minds. For the first time in his long career, Admiral Kong Tay felt small. Not because of the size of the universe, but because he suddenly understood that humanity might be important in ways they had never imagined. And that importance might be the most terrifying thing of all. Somewhere out there, in the archives of dead civilizations, the truth was waiting. And humanity was finally ready to find it. Whether they were ready to accept it was another question entirely. The Earth's security. Council met in a room deep underground. The room had no windows, no decorations, and no comfort. It was designed for secrets. Today, it would hold the biggest secret in human history. Cho Mina stood at the front of the room. She was an intelligence officer, trained to find patterns in chaos. For the past 6 months, she had done nothing but study the warnings. She had read translations from 37 dead civilizations. She had mapped their locations across the galaxy. She had traced their histories and their endings. Now she had to explain what she found. "Thank you for coming," she began. Her voice was steady, but her hands were cold. "What I am about to tell you will change everything we believe about ourselves." She pressed a button, and the wall behind her lit up with a map of the galaxy. Red dots appeared across it, spreading like drops of blood in water. "These are the civilizations that left warnings about Earth," she said. 37 of them. The oldest existed 800 million years ago. The youngest died just 200,000 years ago. They lived in different parts of the galaxy. They had different bodies, different minds, different cultures. Most of them never knew each other existed. She paused to let that sink in. But they all agreed on one thing. Earth was special. Earth was dangerous. And Earth must never be disturbed. An old general raised his hand. "Why? What did they think was so special about us?" "That is what took me 6 months to understand," Mina said. "At first, I thought they were afraid of humanity. I thought maybe they saw our future. Maybe they knew we would become powerful and wanted to stop us." She shook her head. "I was wrong. They were not afraid of humans. They were afraid of what humans contain." The room became very quiet. Mina brought up a new image. It showed brain scans, neural patterns, waves of electrical activity. "This is human consciousness," she said. "The electrical signals produced by our brains. Every thought, every dream, every emotion creates a pattern. A frequency. A noise." She zoomed in on the image. 8 billion humans on Earth, all thinking at the same time. All dreaming at the same time. The combined noise of human consciousness is constant. It never stops. It has not stopped for 200,000 years. Dr. Yunde stepped forward. He was a theoretical physicist, one of the smartest people alive. His hair was gray and his eyes were tired, but his mind was sharper than anyone in the room. "I have been working with Officer Cho on a hypothesis," he said. "It sounds impossible, but the evidence supports it." He pulled up equations that most people in the room could not understand. "Human consciousness operates on a specific frequency," he explained. "This frequency does something unique. It creates a barrier, a wall between our dimension and something else, something that exists in the spaces between realities." He looked at the faces around him. The ancient civilizations did not avoid Earth because humanity was dangerous. They avoided Earth because humanity is a prison. The constant noise of human thought keeps something locked away. Something that was here before the Earth existed. Something that is waiting. The general stood up. His face was red with anger. This is nonsense. You expect us to believe that humans are some kind of cosmic jail? That our thoughts keep a monster trapped? Yes, Yunde said simply. That is exactly what I expect you to believe. Before anyone could argue, an alert sounded. A young officer rushed into the room and whispered something to Mina. Her face went pale. We have contact, she announced. First contact. A living alien species. They call themselves the Keth. The room exploded with noise. Living aliens. After centuries of searching, humanity had finally found them. But Mina held up her hand. There is more, she said. Their first message was not a greeting. It was a question. She played the audio. The alien voice was strange and musical, but the translation was clear. Why are you out here? Who is watching the gate? Silence fell again. The general sat down slowly. His anger was gone, replaced by something else. Something that looked like fear. They know what we are. Lieutenant Beak Gina had been monitoring the Kith communication. She was young and brave, assigned to Deep Space Patrol near the edge of human territory. When the alien signal came through, she was the first to respond. Now she was speaking with creatures from another world. You should not be here, the Keth ambassador said. His image flickered on her screen. He had 4 arms and skin like silver water. His eyes were large and filled with something like sadness. Your kind must stay on your world. The noise must continue. What noise? Gina asked. What are you talking about? The sound of human minds, the ambassador replied. It is the only thing holding the door closed. If you spread too thin across the stars, the noise will weaken. If the noise weakens, the door will open. If the door opens, everything ends. Gina felt cold despite the warmth of her ship. What is behind the door? She asked. The Keth ambassador was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was barely a whisper. We do not know. We only know that every civilization that tried to find out is now dead. We only know that your species, alone in all the universe, keeps it sleeping. We only know that we have watched your world for 1,000,000 years, praying that you never fall silent. He leaned closer to the screen. You are not the prisoners, he said. You are the guards, and you did not even know it. Back on Earth, Mina ended her presentation. The council members sat in shocked silence. Everything they believed about humanity had just changed. They were not alone in the universe. They were not random. They were not meaningless. They were the lock. And somewhere in the darkness between dimensions, something was pressed against the door, waiting, listening, hoping that one day the noise would stop. Mina looked at the ceiling, imagining the sky beyond it, imagining the billions of minds above her, dreaming and thinking and arguing and loving. Keep dreaming, she thought. Please keep dreaming. Professor Shinwu had spent his entire life digging through alien ruins. He had found weapons that could burn stars. He had discovered art that moved people to tears even though no one understood it. He had held technology that made humanity look like children playing with sticks, but nothing had prepared him for what he found on the dead world of Orvos Prime. The planet had been beautiful once. Now it was nothing but gray dust and black stone. The Orvani had lived here 400 million years ago. They had been brilliant. They had been powerful. They had been curious. They had also been foolish. Wu stood in the center of what had once been their great library. The walls were covered with writing that his team was slowly translating. Each day brought new horrors. They knew about Earth, his assistant said quietly. They knew about the sleeper. Everyone knew about the sleeper, Wu replied. The question is what they did about it. The translation appeared on his screen. He read it slowly, feeling his stomach turn with each word. The Orvani had not been content to simply avoid Earth. They had wanted to free the sleeper. They believed that whatever was trapped beneath human consciousness was a god. They believed that if they released it, it would reward them with power beyond imagination. So they had sent ships to Earth, not to make contact, not to study. They had sent ships to kill. It caused an extinction event, Wu whispered. 400 million years ago, they tried to wipe out all life on Earth. His assistant nodded grimly. They almost succeeded. They killed 90% of everything on the planet. It is in the fossil record. Scientists always thought it was natural, a meteor or a volcano, but it was not. It was murder. Act! Wu kept reading. The Orvani had celebrated at first. They had watched Earth burn. They had waited for the noise of life to stop. They had prepared to greet their new god. But life on Earth did not die completely. Small creatures survived. Tiny, frightened things hiding in the deep ocean and dark caves. Enough life remained to keep thinking. Enough noise remained to keep the door closed. And then something happened to the Orvani. Their records ended suddenly. One day, they were a thriving civilization of billions. The next day, they were gone. Not dead. Gone. No bodies. No ruins, no sign of what happened. They simply vanished, as if they had never existed. The sleeper punished them, Wu said. They tried to free it, and it destroyed them. He moved to the next section of the library. Here was another civilization. The Desic Collective. They had existed 50 million years ago. They had taken a different approach. The Vesic had not tried to destroy life on Earth. They had tried to change it. They had sent ships to find the early ancestors of humans. Small, furry creatures that lived in trees and ate insects. The Desic had experimented on them. They had tried to make them smarter. They had tried to change the frequency of their thoughts. They believed that if they could alter human consciousness, they could turn the prison into a door. They could control the sleeper instead of fearing it. The experiments failed. The creatures died. And one night, across every VSEC world at the same moment, the lights went out. When other civilizations sent ships to investigate, they found empty cities and silent machines. The Vesic were gone. Not dead. Wu sat down heavily. His legs were shaking. There's more, his assistant said. The Morvith. They existed 200,000 years ago. Just as humans were becoming human, Morvith had not tried to kill humanity or change it. They had simply tried to talk to it. They had sent 12 ships to Earth to make first contact. To introduce themselves, to become friends, 11 ships returned. The records were horrifying. The Morvith crew members had torn out their own eyes. They had scratched at their own skin until it bled. They had repeated the same phrase over and over in their own language. It looked back. Through them, it looked back. Whatever the sleeper was, it had seen the Morvith through human eyes. It had noticed them, and that notice had broken their minds. The 12th ship never returned. The Morvith searched for it for centuries. They never found it. Eventually, they stopped searching. They built great weapons and pointed them at Earth, ready to destroy the planet if the sleeper ever woke. They were still pointing those weapons when they vanished. Just like the others. Empty ships floating in space. Empty cities on empty worlds. Gone, Wu sent his report to Admiral Kang. Tay. Then he sat in the ruins of the Orvani library and thought about what it all meant. 3 civilizations had tried to interfere with. Earth 3 civilizations had been erased. Not just killed, erased, as if the universe itself had removed them. The sleeper did not want to be freed. Or maybe it did not care. Maybe it simply punished anything that disturbed its rest. Maybe it was not evil or good. Maybe it was just vast and patient and utterly without mercy. Meanwhile, on Earth, something strange was happening at the Antarctic Research Station. Dr. Kim Soo had been studying ice cores for 20 years. She was looking for clues about ancient climate. Instead, she found something impossible. Her instruments were detecting a signal, a pattern of energy coming from deep beneath the ice. At first, she thought it was a malfunction. Then, she thought it was an earthquake. Then she ran the data through her computer and realized what she was seeing. Mathematical patterns, perfect sequences, prime numbers, and geometric ratios. The kind of patterns that could only be produced by intelligence. The signal was not coming from the ice. It was coming from below the ice, from deep within the Earth itself, and it was old. Older than the planet, older than the sun. The patterns had been there since before the Earth existed. They had been waiting inside the rock that would eventually form the planet. Sue stared at her screen. Her hands were trembling. The signal was not just patterns. It was a message. And as she watched, the message began to change. The patterns shifted. They became more complex. They began to respond to her instruments. Something down there knew. She was looking. Something down there was looking back. Sue picked up her communicator and called her supervisor. Her voice was steady, but her heart was pounding. "I need to report something," she said. "Something has noticed us, and I think it is very, very old." Outside her window, the Antarctic wind howled across the ice. Beneath her feet, deep in the darkness, something that had been sleeping for billions of years began to stir, not waking, not yet, but dreaming. And in its dreams, it smiled. The sun was dying, not permanently, not dramatically, but for 17 minutes. A massive solar flare would hit Earth with enough force to destroy every electronic device on the planet. Power grids would fail. Communications would stop. Screens would go dark. For 17 minutes, humanity would be thrown back to the age before electricity. Admiral Kong Tae stood in the emergency command center, watching the countdown. He was not worried about the technology. Technology could be rebuilt. He was worried about something else entirely. "How long until the flare hits?" he asked. "For hours," the technician replied. "For hours until silence. For hours until 8 billion minds lost their constant connection to screens and speakers and the endless noise of modern life. For hours until humanity went quiet for the first time in over a century." Cho Mina stood beside him. She had not slept in 3 days. "We do not know what will happen," she admitted. "The warnings say human consciousness keeps the door closed. They say the noise is important, but they do not say what happens if the noise stops for a short time. Maybe nothing," Tae said hopefully. "Maybe everything," Mina replied. Across the solar system, Captain Park Yuna pushed her ship as fast as it would go. The horizon's edge was racing back toward Earth. She had been studying another alien archive when the news came. Now she was desperate to get home. "Can we make it in time?" she asked her pilot. "No, Captain. We will arrive 6 hours after the flare." Yuna closed her eyes. 6 hours. If something happened during those 17 minutes of silence, she would not be there to help. She would not be there to protect her home. "Keep going," she ordered. "Whatever happens, we need to be there when it is over." On the edge of human space, Lieutenant Beek Gina was coordinating with the Keth. Their silver ships had appeared by the dozens, forming a ring around Earth's solar system. They were not attacking. They were not threatening. They were watching. "What are you doing?" Gina asked the ambassador. "Waiting," he replied. His forearms were folded, and his large eyes were fixed on something far away. "We have waited for 1,000,000 years. We can wait a few hours more." "Waiting for what?" The ambassador turned to look at her. There was something in his expression that might have been pity. "To see if your species survives. To see if the lock holds. To see if we need to begin our contingency." Gina felt a chill run down her spine. "What contingency?" "If Earth goes silent permanently, the door will open. We cannot stop what comes through. Nothing can. But we can try to restart your civilization. We have preserved human genetic material. We have recorded human languages and cultures and thoughts. If your world dies, we will try to rebuild it somewhere else. We will try to create new humans to maintain the lock." "You would clone us?" "We would do anything," the ambassador said simply. "The alternative is the end of everything." Back on Earth, Chomina had an idea. If the danger came from silence, the solution was noise. She convinced the Emergency Council to authorize the largest DAS in human history. Every radio station on Earth began transmitting. Every screen that still had power showed images, and played sounds. Speakers in every city blasted music into the streets. People were told to go outside, to talk, to sing, to argue, to do anything except be quiet. Think loudly, the emergency broadcast said. Keep your minds active. Do not sleep. Do not rest. For the next 4 hours, humanity needs to be the noisiest species in the universe. People did not understand why. They thought it was a drill or a strange government experiment, but they did it anyway. Cities that were usually quiet at night came alive with noise. Families gathered and talked about everything and nothing. Children ran through streets shouting and laughing. Musicians played on rooftops. Arguments broke out in cafes and bars. Earth had never been so loud. Then the flare hit. It was like someone had flipped a switch. Every light went out at once. Every screen went dark. Every speaker went silent. The emergency systems, protected by special shielding, kept working. But everything else stopped. For a moment, humanity held its breath. Then the silence came. It was not complete silence. People were still talking, still thinking, still dreaming, but it was different. Without the constant background noise of technology, human consciousness felt thinner, weaker, like a wall that had suddenly lost half its bricks. Dr. Kim. Sue was still in Antarctica when the silence fell. She was alone in her station, surrounded by darkness. Her emergency generator kept one small light burning, but everything else was dead. She should have been afraid. Instead, she felt strangely peaceful. Something was different. The signal she had been detecting was stronger now. The patterns were clearer, and somewhere, in the back of her mind, she could almost understand them. She closed her eyes. And for the first time in her life, she dreamed while awake. She dreamed of a door. It was vast beyond imagining. It stood in a place that was not a place, surrounded by darkness that was not darkness. The door was ancient, older than stars, older than time, and it was cracked open just slightly. Something was pressed against the gap, something huge and patient and hungry. It had been pressing for billions of years. It had been waiting for the noise to stop. Now, for 17 minutes, the noise was quieter, and the door was opening. Just a little. Just enough for something to look through. Sue felt it see her. She felt its attention brush against her mind like a finger across a cobweb. It was not angry. It was not evil. It was simply vast. So vast that her mind could not contain the shape of it, and it spoke to her. Not in words. In feelings. An ancient, terrible understanding. It is almost time, the feeling said. But not yet. Not quite yet. Across the world, everyone who was sleeping had the same dream. They saw the door. They felt the thing behind it. They heard its patient, loving whisper. Soon, it promised. Soon I will be with you again. Soon we will be one, and then. After 17 minutes that felt like 17 years, the power returned. Screens flickered back to life. Speakers crackled with static. The noise of technology filled the air again. The wall rebuilt itself, brick by brick. The door closed, but not all the way. Not quite as tightly as before. When rescuers reached the Antarctic station, they found Kim Sue sitting calmly in her chair. She was smiling. Her eyes were open, but they were wrong. They reflected light that was not there. They saw things that no human should see. It knows we are here now, she said softly. It is so proud of how far we have come. It can wait a little longer. And she collapsed. The doctors said she was in a coma. The scientists said her brain patterns were normal. But Mina, watching from the command center, knew the truth. Part of Kim Sue had stayed behind. Part of her was still standing at the door, looking through the gap at the thing on the other side, and the thing was looking back. Through her eyes, through her mind, waiting, the silence event was over. Humanity had survived, but something had changed. The door was weaker now. The sleeper was closer to waking, and for the first time in billions of years. It was not just waiting, it was anticipating. 1 year had passed since the silence event. The world had changed in ways both visible and invisible. Admiral Kong-tae stood on the observation deck of the new orbital station. Watching as the final piece of the Chorus network moved into position, hundreds of satellites now circled Earth, each one designed to broadcast human thought patterns into space. If the power ever failed again, if humanity ever went quiet, the satellites would keep the noise going. They were backups. Insurance policies against the end of everything. "It is finished," said Dr. Yoon-dae, standing beside him. The physicist looked older now. His hair was completely white, and his eyes carried a weight that had not been there before. "Is it enough?" Tae asked. "Do not know. No one knows. But it is better than nothing." Yoon-dae had dedicated the past year to understanding the sleeper. His research had taken him to the edges of human knowledge and beyond. He had learned things that he wished he could forget. He had seen equations that made his hands shake, and he had discovered something troubling. "The researchers who get too close change," he explained quietly. "They start to love what they study. They start to see the sleeper not as a threat, but as something beautiful, something to be welcomed rather than feared in you." Tae asked. Yoon-dae was quiet for a long moment. "I am careful," he finally said. "I step back when the love begins. I remember that beauty can be a trap. But I understand now why the ancient civilizations tried to free it. The sleeper is not evil. It is not good. It is simply complete, perfect, and part of every mind that touches it wants to be complete too." Far away on the edge of human space, Beak Gina was preparing for her new role. She was no longer a lieutenant. She was now Ambassador Beak, humanity's first representative to the galactic community. And there was a community. After the silence event, they had stopped hiding. The Keth had been watching Earth for 1,000,000 years. But they were not alone. Dozens of species had been observing humanity from the shadows. Some were old beyond imagining. Some had been guarding Earth since before humans existed. All of them had been waiting for this moment. "You know now," the Keth ambassador said during their first official meeting. "You understand what you are. What you have always been? Guardians?" Gina said. "Jailers. The lock on a door that must never open. Yes. And now you must choose. Will you continue? Will you accept this duty?" Gina thought about Earth, about the billions of people living their ordinary lives, working and playing and loving and fighting. They did not know the full truth. They had been told that the silence event was caused by the solar flare, nothing more. The governments of the world had agreed that some secrets were too heavy for ordinary people to carry. But Gina knew, and she had to answer for all of them. "We did not ask for this," she said. "We did not choose to be the lock. It was forced upon us before we even existed." "That is true," the ambassador agreed, "but it does not matter." Gina straightened her shoulders. "We are human. We do not run from responsibility. We do not hide from duty. If the universe needs us to keep dreaming, we will dream. If it needs us to keep making noise, we will make noise. We will guard this door forever if we have to." The ambassador's silver face moved in what might have been a smile. "We hoped you would say that. We have been hoping for 1,000,000 years." Captain Park Yuna had returned to space. She now commanded the first human fleet dedicated to xenorchaeology. Her mission was simple: find every warning that had ever been written about Earth. Learn everything that the dead civilizations knew. "Archive teaches us something new," she reported to Tae. Velmori understood the sleeper's patience. The Orvani understood its power. The Vesic understood how it spreads through consciousness. Every piece of knowledge helps us prepare. "Prepare for what?" Tae asked. Why Una paused. Her expression was serious. "For the day when we are not enough. For the day when the door opens despite everything we do." The ancient civilizations were not just leaving warnings. They were leaving instructions. They were telling us how to fight. Dr. Lee Hanna had continued her translations. She had read the words of 1,000 dead species. She had learned their hopes and fears and final messages. And in the oldest archive ever found, left by a civilization that existed before Earth was formed, she had found something that changed everything. She had shared it with Te during a quiet moment. Just the two of them, standing in her office surrounded by alien texts. They did not know what the sleeper is, she said. They only knew that when the universe was young and empty, it was already waiting. And then, on a small blue world, something began to dream back. Dream back? Tay frowned. Human consciousness is not just a cage, Hannah explained. Her eyes were bright with something like wonder. It is a response. The sleeper has been singing into the void for billions of years. A song of hunger and loneliness and perfect, terrible desire. And then humans appeared, and we sang back. She pulled up the final translation. The words were simple, but beautiful. We do not know why humans are the lock, she read. We only know that for the first time in all of existence, the sleeper stopped moving toward the door. It stopped to listen. It stopped because, against all odds, it found something it did not expect in the noise of human minds. A lullaby. Tay stared at the words. A lullaby. Humanity was not just keeping the sleeper trapped. They were keeping it calm. Their messy, chaotic, beautiful thoughts were a song that the sleeper wanted to hear. We are not the prison, he said slowly. We are the comfort, as Hannah said. And that is why we matter. That is why every civilization that ever existed left us alone. Not because they feared us, because they loved what we do. Cho Mina had retired from intelligence work. She had seen too much, known too much. The weight of the secret had become too heavy for her shoulders. Now, she lived in a small house in the countryside. She spent her days teaching children at the local school. Simple lessons. Reading and writing and mathematics. But sometimes, when the children were curious, she taught them something else. What is the loudest sound in the universe? She would ask, the children would guess. Thunder, explosions, screaming. Mina would shake her head. The loudest sound in the universe is a human asking why. Asking questions. Wondering about things. Never being satisfied with silence. The children did not understand. They were too young. But someday they would. Someday they would learn what Mina had learned. What Tay and Yuna and Hannah and Gina had learned. Humanity was special. Not because they were strong or smart or good, but because they were loud. Because they never stopped thinking and dreaming and questioning and hoping. Because somewhere, in the darkness between stars, something ancient and vast and terribly lonely was listening. And as long as humans kept singing, it was content to wait. In the Antarctic, the rebuilt research station, a new team monitored the signal from deep within the Earth. It was still there. It would always be there. But it was quiet now, peaceful, like something sleeping soundly after a long night. Kim Soo never woke from her coma. But sometimes, late at night, the nurses who watched over her would see her smile. A small, gentle smile. As if she was dreaming of something beautiful. And far away in the spaces between dimensions, the sleeper dreamed too. It dreamed of a small blue world and the strange, wonderful creatures that lived upon it. It dreamed of their noise and their chaos and their endless, beautiful questions. It did not need to wake. Not yet. Not while they were still singing. The universe was old and cold and empty. But somewhere in the darkness, a single planet burned with the light of 8 billion minds. And that light was enough. It would always be enough. The door remained closed. The guard remained vigilant. And humanity, without fully knowing why, kept dreaming, kept hoping, kept singing their lullaby to the dark. This was their purpose. This had always been their purpose. And they would never stop.